All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome back to our Thursday Tech Talk. Today we have Antoinette Smith here with us. Please send me any questions you have in the chat, and without further ado, I will hand it over to Dr. Wolf.
Well, good morning. Technically, it's morning, everyone. How's everybody doing? We're having a good day today. So I'm going to actually button my collar. I have a dark background. One of the things that we learned about etiquette is to try to have a very non-disruptive background. So I got some feedback that my videos of my office was not doing too well. So without any further ado, today we actually have Antoinette Smith. And Antoinette is an incredible technical person who has such broad and deep reaching tentacles into the community as well as into just the national scene, if you will. And I think it's very important for you to understand that when people talk about becoming a software developer, that it means different things to different people. There's also a lot of different classifications of software development. And so I'm not going to go into digging myself or backing myself against a wall with these things. So I would like to introduce Antoinette. So Antoinette, how are you doing today?
Hey, Michael, and hey, everyone at home. I'm doing really well. I'm on break from work in my home, which is kind of noisy. Sorry about that.
Hey, you're on break. So you're on so you're giving up your time on vacation for us? Or
I'm not on vacation. I'm just not working during this time.
Lunch, a quote unquote lunch break of sorts. Yeah, that's important because we certainly wouldn't want to put you at jeopardy for any of these things. So yeah, no, I get it. This is a great lunchtime break, and we're hoping that the students that are out there also have an opportunity to hear from you about this world of technology. So from a software perspective, the purpose of this is for the high school students to understand what they can do, what they can prepare for on the technology side to grow and become in some level of software development. So that's what we'll surround. But certainly we could talk about any area of technology, engineering, or whatever we may so choose. So tell us a little bit about what your role is today and what you do, Antoinette.
Sure. So today I work as an engineering manager at a startup called Glitch. So my day-to-day is checking in with people. I have 7 direct reports. I meet with them regularly. I help them with like planning what their days are going to look like kind of loosely, helping them prioritize goals for like what we want to get done, features we want to build, and that sort of thing.
Yeah. So when you talk, so you have 7 software developers or 7 staff?
I have 7 staff. So we are a small enough company that everybody kind of does a lot of things, but really if you were to break it down into like the roles that they have, I would say that 3 of them are software engineers, and then the other 4 are what we call site reliability engineers.
Okay. So you now manage people. When you started out, I mean, had you envisioned wanting to go into software development or in this particular line of work?
I mean, I guess it depends on where starting out starts, right? So when I was in high school, I certainly did not think that writing code was something that I could get a job doing. It had never even occurred to me. I didn't know anybody that did anything like that. So initially, when I graduated from high school, I went to school for civil engineering. My dad was a civil engineer. And then eventually, you know, I was in and out of college for many years, and I eventually got a degree in technical communication and a minor in computer science. By the time I got that minor in computer science, I had actually worked at some jobs where I was doing like coding type things, like working with databases or like, you know, modifying web pages and that sort of thing. So I had a better understanding of like, oh, there are people that do this. There are people that get paid to do these sorts of things. But I still wasn't like sold on the idea of being a developer. I thought that perhaps like what I could do is I could like pair like my technical knowledge, which I got from like doing some of those other jobs, but then also I worked with my brother, who was older than me and started off as a graphic designer, but became a web designer.
Mm.
So I had worked with him on some web stuff, a lot of server side things. And so I thought, hey, I can take this knowledge and I can take my knowledge of like technical writing, which I just got my degree in, and do some roles in tech that are not development. I can continue, or you can ask a follow-up question.
No, let it flow. I mean, I'm fascinated by the fact that you've transitioned through so many different roles and now you're in a leadership position. And so, you know, if I'm thinking of myself as the average high school student, you know, that doesn't even know that they have a gift or a talent for that, and how you've just been able to leverage just a hobby and turn it into a great career. So that this conversation is perfect. That's the exact conversation we want to have. So to keep triggering on that, so you actually did get certified, or you have a degree in technical writing. Is that what I understand? Or you pursued technical writing?
Yeah, I have a bachelor's degree in technical communication.
Okay, so you took that communications degree, and then now you're actually a software developer. What was the first, like, when you felt that you were a software developer, like a legit like developer, what job was that, and what type of language were you programming in?
Yeah, so my first like full-time paid, like you are paid to write software or write code all day job was at a larger startup than the one I'm at now that's local to Minneapolis, called Code 42. So I started there as like a junior Java developer. So I was doing Java development, and that's like my first like legit like getting a salary for writing code job.
So you know me, I'm gonna ask, because to me, when you say the word Java, I think, oh, hard, right? I mean, the average person is like, that sounds very powerful, very, very difficult. So where did you learn Java? Did they just hire you because of your other skills and then you learned Java, or had you taken a Java class, or how did you get to the front door of that particular junior Java developer job?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. So, so to be honest, because you know, it was a long time ago. So,
Yeah.
I had never done Java for like a job. I had done another server-side language called PHP. When I was working with my brother, it was just like reading like books and then like building out some server stuff. So by the time I like applied to Code 42, the only Java I had done was like in computer science courses that I had in undergrad. And so, yeah, that was like it. And, you know, like you don't do a whole lot with Java, but like I did like do some coding, like some very small bits of coding. But I guess the thing that was important when I interviewed was that, you know, even though I had only like done a little Java, I bought a book on like Java, like a very short book on like, I think it was called like Java, the Hard Parts, or Java, I don't know. It was a very short book, but it was by a person who had worked in Java their whole life. And it was good for getting me familiar with the types of things that Java developers think about, which was really useful during my interview.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. I mean, that's really cool, because a lot of the students that are going to be on this, and maybe the early college students that will likely see this, you know, you're taking these classes, you're doing these things, but you don't really have any real world experience. You might not even be being instructed or taught or led by a software developer that can give you the full background and context. And that's not a disparaging remark to our computer science teachers, but a lot of CS teachers are teaching based on what they understand and reading from the script and the template. So I think that's pretty cool. And it's also that it sounds like you dove in, and like you said, your brother did some things, and you also understood like how like a website worked, because you use the term server side, and then the other side of that is the client side, and then there's other sides to it, right? The other back end databases and all that. But that's pretty impressive. That's a really cool way to start. And then I guess the other thing that I heard you say was you have a bachelor's degree, a 4-year degree in technical writing. So the next two questions are going to be like, if a high school student today, on everything that you knew, if a high school student in 11th grade today wanted to learn a language, what language would that be? And then in the same context or part of that conversation is, would you suggest that they learn it on their own, go to a certificate program, maybe just pursue a 2-year degree, or offer the value of a 4-year degree? And then, like, legitimately, what would be your advice?
Yeah, I mean, that is such a hard question, but obviously it's coming from my, just my background and my life experience. So I think if I was in 11th grade right now, I would learn JavaScript. Like, JavaScript is a language that's really popular, that you can use for both server-side and client-side development. And I think that helps with, like, one, you only have one language to focus on, while you kind of suss out the difference between a client and a server, which is often it's often like a topic that's really hard to understand when you are new to, like, software development. So definitely JavaScript, but I do think that there are some other languages, like if they're, like, really interested, if they, like, just want to do all the things, that are becoming more and more popular, like Go. I guess Go is probably the one. That's the one that I see, like, kind of the most people using, that feels like probably like one of the skills that will definitely be sought after in the next few years.
Can you spell it? Is it just Go? Like G-O?
Yeah,
Huh.
Geo. Yeah, and if you wanna like actually search for it, because it's hard to search for it because it's Go, right? You could do Golang, so Golang, and that should give you resources on that particular language.
Okay, maybe Lindsay could Google that for us and drop it into chat. We can put that as a reference too. So you were going to say Go, so that's new. So there are new and emerging languages coming out as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's, I mean, Michael, you've been in the world, this world longer than I have, so I'm sure you've seen quite a few languages come in and out of popularity.
I'm just the moderator. I'm the host, right? I have to set you up with those softball questions. But I do appreciate you saying I've been around longer than you versus, like, look at those gray hairs, you old man. But I get it. No, I get it. So Go is an emerging language. And then, so I'm very excited about JavaScript because I look at that as being like a classical foundational language. You can run it without having internet connection. You can learn it and build it without having an internet connection, as long as you have a fairly all you have to really do is have a fairly decent computer. And that's why I like JavaScript the best for students to learn, because it gives you everything from the ability to learn how to do structured coding to data types. You could even do a local database. You could do security masking. You can do, I mean, it's very powerful if you get to the advanced stuff. So tell me about this then. Go is an emerging language, and we'll begin to investigate that and education on it. But let's talk a little bit about, build on what I might have said about JavaScript. And if you had to learn JavaScript as an 11th grader, you know, I personally am familiar with W3 schools, Khan Academy. There's different educational outlets. There's also boot camps and all that realm of 2-year degrees, certificate, bachelor's. Like, based on your biases, based on you know where the world is going, which is very progressive, what would you tell an 11th grader once they're learning JavaScript if they wanted to formalize that professional coder degree or certification? What advice would you give them?
I mean, yeah, I mean, this is a very hard question. Like, definitely there are plenty of developers that are self-taught. You can go to, like, the sites that Michael mentioned. There's also Code Academy and Treehouse and all sorts of things. There's also languages like Vue. Okay, not languages, frameworks like Vue and React. So a framework is basically a collection of code that allows you to more easily build things, basically. So there's a lot of online tutorials and things like that. And the good thing about, like, Code Academy and Free Code Camp is that they give you projects to build. So they give you, like, okay, if you were going to build this, like, application, that's like, what if you were to build Twitter yourself, that sort of thing. And it helps you to think about, like, how you actually architect an application. And I think that like as you're leveling up your skills as a software developer, like, so there's one thing to just be like kind of comfortable with the language, getting used to like variables and things like that. It's another thing to be able to say, okay, now that I know these things, like how do I put together an application that then other people can work on with me? Because that's also a skill in itself. Because just because you write something one way doesn't mean that like it will be easy for other people to like come into your project and help you. And the fact is that most of the web applications and websites that you visit are built by lots and lots of people. So that's super important. But like, if you, I think, you know, going to a boot camp is great if you can afford it. It's not affordable for everyone. It's definitely less expensive than college. But the thing about getting a college degree is it's definitely like, you know, there's definitely like a certain amount of privilege that you have to be a person that does not have a college degree when you're applying for jobs. So, I mean, it's really like a personal calculation that you have to make. Like do you already have like connections in software that you can kind of like talk to and use to your advantage? Or are you going to be someone that is like completely new to this? You have no like real connections in the field, and you might find barriers when you start applying if you don't have a college degree. But like, if you're going to go to school for something, just know that computer science is more theoretical. And if you like theoretical things, then computer science is a great option. However, if you're not that into theory, then if you can find a software engineering degree, then I think you're gonna like that a lot better because it's more hands-on and application focused.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I know I totally agree with you. And I know we'll talk a little bit about your technology world outside of your day-to-day job with the organizations that you've helped found and build out and all that. But I want to go back to something that you said, and it's something that I am like you kindly said, I'm old, but I came from a world of coding that they called it curses mode, right? So curses mode coding is line by line coding. And if you typed in the syntax wrong, you didn't have an editor to go back and change the code and rerun it, right? You had to retype the whole program or change the line of code, upload the text file because you had a typo. So you would swear like, doggone it, I made a typo. That's curses mode, right? So green screen, whatever, COBOL, all those old languages, Fortran and all that, before the user interface came in. And then there's a phase of history where the developer interface, like Eclipse, right, for Java, it brings in all the tools and everything, the user interface to help make coding good. So I'm leading to this last question of becoming a developer, becoming an app builder. I don't know the technical terms right now, to be quite candid, but there are what I call the drag and drop module coders, right? And then you have a little bit deeper dive, the curses mode, where you actually type code or grab snippets of code. So there's an extreme in between there. That's a broad extreme from somebody who just says, grab this service, change 2 parameters, and that it builds auto-generate your code, because that's where the world is going, right? So the average technical business analyst can write business code, and that makes perfect sense. But from a high school person's perspective, wanting to break into the world, knowing that new languages are coming out and these frameworks which are there, and this is just your opinion, your advice, but where would I focus my time in after JavaScript? I mean, would I look at some of these frameworks per se? Would I look at some of these user block coding type interfaces? Just share about that, because it may be a hard question, but it's not to put you into a hole. It's just legitimately, what is your opinion on something like that?
Yeah, I guess I am not sure. So here's I just want to kind of clarify something. Okay, so there's like coding where you're like writing lines of code doing what Michael calls curses mode, which is really not that bad anymore. There are developer tools that makes
tell me. I was born too early.
Yeah, that makes figuring out what's wrong a lot easier. But like, I guess like the things that I noticed just from like work experience in like even outside of tech, just like in using business applications, is that there are applications where it's good to have some technical knowledge, because like you have to configure things, you have to like, you know, like kind of Michael said, you have to say, okay, I want to pull in this piece, and then I need to change some config values so that all of these things work. That is like one path, and that's like the sort of thing that I like personally have no interest in. It really bores me, but that's like totally a valid path for some people. The other part is like then writing application code, which has its own frustrations, because a lot of times you're building a lot of things from the ground up. You do have libraries, which are like bundles of code that you can pull in to make some things easier, but it's definitely a different day-to-day experience. And I personally find that experience a lot more fun. It feels more like solving a puzzle and that sort of thing.
Mhm.
So if I were you and I was more into like the solving a puzzle type of thing, and I was like looking to like get a job someplace where people are like building code, then I would, after you do your basic JavaScript, I would start looking into like what are the popular frameworks, and then doing like tutorials on those things and trying to build things with that. So right now, the most popular JavaScript framework is React. And then the only option you have for backend server-side JavaScript development is Node. As far as I know, I mean, if anyone else is doing anything, it's probably built on top of Node. But like those are the things that are super popular now. The JavaScript framework world changes all the time, though. So you'll see other frameworks being used like Angular, Vue, Svelte. There's just like, there's a new noun every like 3 months or something. So
I see the technology world has not slowed down since I've been out there. So I have, every time you say something, it creates new interest. And so I always like to throw you curveballs. Since we've interviewed so much, we can certainly watch your other interview to get those other questions out of the way. So as you know, we've been heavily involved with training younger students through another organization, the Minnesota STEM Partnership. And really the vision of that is literally tied, and I have not divulged this to very many people, but it's all tied to the software developer and positioning our young folks to be able to become in a place at a skill level where they get a variety of robotics, they get a variety of data, they get a variety of coding, and in that context, drones as well, so that they pick up the concept of virtual reality goggles, a first-person viewer, right? So if you take all those elements and you put them together, really the baseline for what we're preparing them for is at least an experience level within software. And the reason for that is likely, I believe, is going to be the strongest, safest, long-term career skill that you can have as we get into artificial intelligence, as we get into augmented reality, as we get into the future, right? If we look, it's here, right? But for the average person, only those early adopters are getting into that world. And so the vision is over a 3 to 5 to 10 year window, we can get those kids ready. And so I say to you is, what you've seen in the industry of software, as well as all the other life things, package delivery, human-like robots, in the context of software, what's your belief or what's your thought on the careers of the future, whether it be software or other things? Where would you advise that 11th grader in or outside of software to pursue based on that long-term trajectory that I outlined, or maybe a long-term trajectory that you may believe in more passionately?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely like the buzzwords now are definitely like machine learning, artificial intelligence, and that sort of thing. So I think that like anyone who has like some experience with that or any interest in that is going to have like a future job. And I think especially it's really important for Black, Indigenous, and other children of color, I think, to be in those industries, because the thing is like using artificial intelligence to make decisions about that may change a person's life is a really big deal. And if you don't have the people in the room who look like the society that that's going to affect, then that can be like a huge problem, and a huge disadvantage for all of us. And so the other thing I want to say is, like, if you are going to go to school and like pursue computer science or pursue software engineering, definitely take your humanities, because being able to like think broadly about society, and the effects that your software is going to have on people, I think is really important for the future.
Yeah, yeah, I would totally agree. The irony of it is I went through 4 years of, getting a computer science quantitative methods. I went through the master's, getting a software engineering, finished a doctorate, right? And then after I finished all these years of school, I said, man, I wish I would have taken a psychology degree,
Mhm.
because understanding how people think, and not, and humanities and the other things, but I wish I would have taken more time to develop a broader perspective of the world, right? So being able to travel, being able to do all those things. And in today's world, I guess the more virtual, I mean, we're kind of forced to be in this virtual world today, but, we have to figure out how to broaden our thinking, and we still have the human side of it. And I am so happy that you said that, because it's always not about the technology. The technology brings you the money, it brings you the opportunity and the privilege to live a quality of life that you may not have been able to otherwise. But I think also preparing for the future and being well balanced for that future is actually, that's great advice. Great advice. So we are about the 30-minute mark. And as we've covered a lot of territory, Antoinette, I didn't mean to throw you any curveballs or softballs or anything like that. And so we've covered the career, we've covered the education, we've talked a little bit about the future. There's also other elements that students can prepare for. And I know that in your world, and I'm going to say it this way, but I want you to say it your way, is volunteerism, joining a SIG or a special interest group, helping create your own movement, right? I'm very fascinated, very proud of what you've done and being able to help bring services to your worlds, right? The tech nerdy type of world to the young person's world, opening doors for people that way. But if I'm an 11th grader and I want to, let's say I'm on my grind, I'm taking the classes, I'm learning JavaScript, I think I'm going to go, self-study to get this cert, but I want to get a 2-year degree, whatever that might be, at a Century or MCTC or wherever. Talk a little bit about whatever organization that you want to highlight, and then even if it's not high school related, but figure out, like, how does that benefit that high school student and why they should join, or at least when they get old enough to join, that they should join. There's another softball for you. So.
That feels like an extremely broad question. As someone who,
you want me to narrow it down? I'll be blunt. So you are so dope. You are part of Techquity. So if you could explain your role in Techquity, Minnesota, and then why. There's Google. Hey, Google, turn on Office. I can't stand it. 12 noon, my lights. I got to change that schedule. Talk about AI. My machine learning isn't working here. Talk about Techquity, and then how a young person could get involved with that movement, and or when they're ready, be involved with a movement like that, or other things they can do to get to your level.
Sure, yeah. I mean, so Techquity is an organization that I co-founded with Sharon Kennedy Vickers, who's currently the CIO at the city of St. Paul. And I am not originally from Minneapolis, so I moved here, and I, kind of joined the tech industry here, and I found that there were no other people that looked like me at my jobs, or at least like that looked like me at my jobs and were doing the same types of work that I was doing. So that was like pretty lonely and a little jarring, especially coming from Chicago, which has a much larger African-American Black population. So, me and Sharon, both transplants to the Twin Cities, both Black women in tech. We had happened to work with some of the same people at different times, and some of those people were like, "Oh, you should meet Antoinette. You should talk to Sharon." And so so Sharon reached out to me, and she's like, further along in her career again. A little older than I am, and so she reached out to me to be supportive of another Black woman in tech, and I was like, it would be great if we had like a meetup. It started as a meetup, and just having different speakers. We talk about tech entrepreneurship. We talk about getting into tech. We talk about like being a leader in technology as a person of color, and that sort of thing. So like, how do you do that? I mean, like, honestly, somehow it just happened. But, and I guess like, that's kind of the thing is like, you can make things, like, it's really up to you. Like, if you want to create something, you can do that. And like, you may create things that end up, not being around anymore, but you still have that experience. And that can definitely help you with other things that you might want to create. But one of the things you can do is like, if you're like, okay, I don't want to create something, I just want to like be a part of something. Michael Wolf is one of the people that I met when I originally came to the Twin Cities, and Michael was part of BDPA, and they were doing, and they still do, the high school technology programs. And I was looking for volunteer opportunities with kids of color. And so I started volunteering for that. And so like, just finding opportunities. It was on Volunteer Match. And just like, just keep trying things until you find like your niche. And that's going to expand your network. It's always going to be beneficial to you in the long run. And, I'm not saying that like you need to do these things because you're going to make more money in your life. But it's like, it's a good side effect.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, we definitely, if there's any students that want to help other students in high school, that you have some advanced stuff, now it's a conglomeration or, collaborative effort, but with the Minnesota STEM Partnership, you can certainly reach out to Lindsay through email. We can get you connected with the Minnesota STEM Partnership. But yeah, that's how we've been able to package what we're doing for that younger group in that early pipeline. So no, I think Tequity is pretty cool, and being able to highlight and just talk about these things, because people want to put everybody in a box, but the reality of it is there's also special challenges being in a particular demographic per se. Another area that I do want to highlight is gender. And so although Minnesota STEM Partnership has this thing called the MSP Women in STEAM, Shakaya Richmond is the chair coordinator for it. We've been able to also help identify some students in high schools that could pursue. In this particular case, we've been aligned with the NCWIT, which is a national consortium of women in technology, and the Aspirations Minnesota program. And that's because of some, alliances and good work that they've been doing. And there's many corporations that have the funding that have supported that. However, there's also other organizations out there like BeWise, and I won't go down the whole list, but the main thing that we're trying to do is to remain agnostic and try to get young females into tech. And I know you, like you said, you are African American, you're female gender, and like there's nobody out there that's looking like you, but there are little pockets. And so bringing those adults together has been important. But talk a little bit about a female student wanting to do things like that besides Minnesota STEM Partnership. I mean, what, like, along the way when you were learning, did you have scenarios where you were like, you didn't sign up? Well, maybe you might not be the same. I've heard stories that, a young girl would not join a robotics club because they were all, Caucasian boys, and they all click together. So you're kind of uncomfortable stepping into that space. Maybe if you could just share any experiences or suggestions how a young woman could fight that urge to not join and just go do it. I'm a male, I'm older, So I would really appreciate any direct advice you might have for our young ladies who want to get into tech, but feel like there's these biases and negativisms, or I just don't want to deal with this nerdy little boys or something. Whatever you want to do, have a little fun with it.
Mm-hmm.
We're not. We're not.
Oh my gosh. I mean, like, so yeah.
Here's a softball. Hit it.
You know, the thing is, I mean, I will tell a few stories, but the thing is that, like, I feel like I don't have the answer, but okay, so here's an example. So when I was a teenager, there was, and I was going to, you know, eventually go major in civil engineering at college. There was this program that happened at a college for the summer that was all about, like, it was for, like, minorities in engineering, you know, so it was high school kids from, like, all over the US and Puerto Rico. And we were all together for, like, a few weeks in the summer, and we were supposed to do these projects, you know, together. So I got this project team that was me and 4 boys, basically. And so, you know, whenever I had an idea, you know, they wouldn't pay attention to me, or they would, like, you know, laugh at me, or, like, it was just, you know, and I was pissed. I was so mad. And so what I ended up doing was I ended up just, like, doing my own project, and I presented it all on my own. And, you know, like, and it was okay then, but obviously, like, that's not a thing you can do in the workplace, sometimes, but not usually. Yeah. So, like, the way that I have, I guess, like, the thing that drives me is that, like, I feel like I should be able to have careers that are as lucrative as white men, you know, like, there's no reason that I can't. And especially if it's something that I enjoy, then why shouldn't I be there? And so if I believe that I should be there, then I'm going to stay there. And I'm not going to let, you know, other people's opinions, or, you know, whatever their learned behaviors are, deter me from that. And then when I do that, I'm going to do it very well, because, you know, I have to, but also because, like, I can. So, I mean, I guess just know that, like, you're fully capable, and you don't have to get buy-in from, like, every boy, but usually there's, like, at least 1 or 2 persons in the group. Typically there's, like, one, like, kind of ringleader, kind of enforcer of the man culture, but the other ones are usually kind of just, like, followers. And typically, if you can talk to them, like, one-on-one, then they usually really are not, they're not, like, consciously trying to keep you out. Yeah, I mean, just, like, you know, basically, can you have conversations with, like, some of the people, the other people, or, like, some of that group, and find, like, kind of your way.
Yep. Finding that informal leader, or, like you said, leader of the pack, and trying to make sure, you know, and it's really unfortunate that we have to even do that, but that's, you know, that's one tactic to do it. Absolutely. But I do like your chutzpah and being able to just go do your own project. That's tight.
Thanks.
Oh yeah, no, that just brings back so many memories going through, even when I was in college, you know, it's the same thing, in just, like, to do something different than the norm and the other people didn't want to do it. You hated to do it, because then you get, like, my equivalent story. I do want to share this because it's gender indifferent, if you will, but, you know, literally when I went to college, I was the only person of color, and they didn't know what color or ethnicity that they really wanted to put me in a box on. But I distinctly remember being in a small group of four people, a girl and 2 guys, and we were driving all in the same car down Selby Avenue, which is, for those not in from this St. Paul, you know, many years ago, Selby Avenue was a rough street. There was a lot, you know, very rough, you know, known for murders and all that stuff. And I'll never forget, one of the students and was a girl student, who made mention about, oh, it's a good thing we're not driving through at night and blah, 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 because you can only see the blah, blah, blahs. And, you know, she said it, and then I was kind of taken aback, and she tried to say it in more of a joke or humorous, but it bothered me so bad. Now, keep in mind, I'm in college going to a prestigious university. I won't even mention the university's name if I haven't, but you know, I had to go talk to my professor because I was so upset by it. And I ended up talking to the dean at the risk of like, I didn't care because I shouldn't have to be made to feel uncomfortable in these settings. And I know, you know, we can laugh things off as kids and all that kind of stuff and being young and ignorant about it. But, you know, I just had another recent conversation about, I'm not here to help you grow as a human being per se. You know, you can't bring all that racism to the table. You need to put yourself in check. That privilege is gone. Those days are gone. And so I'm very glad that you shared your example. But also, too, I think we have to find that inner strength to just break down the barriers. And by breaking down the barriers or being present, doing and participating in those things that you are given the privilege to participate in, like robotics class, like computer science, like coding, even though it's room full of boys, or even if it's a room full of girls, right? Whatever it is, whatever gender that you identify with and you bring to the table, you need to find somewhere some bravery if that's really what you want to do, or you find alternative methods. But, you know, Antoinette, that's the one thing I truly respected since the day I met you, was that you understood what you're trying to do, you understood what your goals and missions were, and you didn't take any guff. And I think how we convey that to today's students to make sure that all of these possibilities, all these jobs and technology are available to you, you know, are available to these students that are on the call. The other thing is that a lot of students don't understand is that Minnesota was one of the high-tech meccas, high-tech centers of the United States, and if not the world. We had Cray, Unisys, you know, we still have Seagate, Boston Scientific. We have all these, you know, companies here, and there are so many technology jobs that, you know, organizations like Techquity, being able to get to the entrepreneur, to able to connect them with the jobs, connect them with the contracts is so dope, because that's really what we need to be about, right? Getting our people employed and getting people of color, but, you know, anybody interested in technology. That whole culture of tech world, to me, is colorless, right? I don't view it, I view it different ways in different settings, but, you know, just to get into that tech culture, because there was so much power in what we have to offer here locally. So many employers are looking for students in tech, and that's why we have Power Up IT to share it. You know, our pilot program has been more urban-based, local, and given the opportunity, we also have cultures of farm culture, right? We have rural culture, and those things take different shapes and forms, but the world of software is global, right? You can be a global consultant if you understand it and know how to position yourself. So you could wake up, feed the chickens, milk the cows, and then have a lucrative IT career. You know, those things are all possible too. So I personally am trying to open up my mindset, as well as looking at those other great opportunities out there in the world. And so, Antoinette, we thank you. Any final or parting words that you want to share with the high school audience in particular, or maybe the early collegiates?
I mean, I guess I would just share that there are, I guess the technology is kind of a part of everything. Having some tech literacy is always going to be beneficial to you, no matter what field you go into.
Gotcha, and I'm on mute. So I guess that is our cue to say, Lindsay, now that we've kind of finished our talk, our interview with Meet the Expert, Miss Antoinette Smith, any questions from the audience?
The one question that we did have kind of already got answered, just about any hurdles or roadblocks as a developer, being a woman and African American in the workforce.
So
yeah, I did talk about. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Nope, you go ahead.
Oh no. Okay, yeah, I was gonna say I definitely did talk about that, but I will say that, you know, having a support group. I mean, part of, you know, the original like kind of impetus for starting Techquity was just like, I just want to be able to like talk about technology with other people of color and talk about our experiences, because, you know, sometimes you feel like very othered sometimes in these environments. And so like having some people or a group to fall back on is really important.
Yeah, very good. All right. Well, Lindsay, I think we're done. Do you want to wrap us up then, and we'll bring this to an end?
Yeah, well, one more quick question. For me personally, I actually got a degree in psychology, and I'm thinking about making a switch into the technology world. And I've explored the options of boot camps, and I've kind of seen two different options that some of them have offered are either front end development or full stack. And could you kind of explain the difference between the two?
Yeah, yeah. So, okay. So front end development is a lot of. So when you go to visit a website, and like all of the things that are on the website that you see are like the things that front end developers build, but also like the interactions. So like when you click on a button and a form is submitted, those are the sorts of things that front end developers work on. A full stack developer is someone that usually has some knowledge in like the front end, more knowledge in the back end. So the back end is like, so once you're done with like, once you go from like the things you see on the website, the place where things actually happen is in the back end. So the back end is enforcing like business rules, like can someone buy more than 3 of this brand of toothpaste? It usually is something that gets enforced on the back end. And a lot of that is building things that you can't like visually see. But if you're like interested just in like business logic and stuff like that, then that's totally going to be interesting. The other part of it, part of the stack is also databases. So then there's this whole other part where like, so you have the server that's like enforcing business rules, and then you have the database where you're actually saving that data so that it lives forever and that you can keep referencing it. So full stack developer knows some front end, but more like back end, more server side and more database stuff. Which one to do? So typically front end developers are not paid as well as full stack developers, but that's usually because of a definite like bias. Usually front end is considered to be a thing that like women do, and that's why it often gets paid less. But still, you can still like, especially like currently, like front end development is so complicated these days that like I think that's becoming less of like the trend. But that is something to look out for.
Okay, thank you so much for that.
You're welcome.
So if there's no other further questions from Dr. Wolf and I here at Power Up IT, we'd like to give a big thank you to Antoinette for such a great presentation. And we will see you back here on Tuesday at 11:30 for our professional development series.
We'll see everyone. Bye-bye.